Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Welcome to episode 161 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Ryan Sember, the Senior Vice President of Partnerships at Logitech. Logitech is a leader in live event ticketing technology and analytics, whose vision is to automate the entire ticket lifecycle and provide data-driven insights to serve the diverse needs of its clients. Ryan is a seasoned sports professional with experiences from Atlanta Spirit, Atlanta Hawks, and Miami Marlins. In this episode, we spoke about his learnings from working at pro teams, the Logitech's One platform, the future of ticketing, and much more. Ryan Sember, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you, Marcus. Appreciate you having me.
It's my great pleasure to have you on the show. You are the Senior Vice President of Partnerships at Logitech. So can you tell us a little bit about your role and Logitech?
Yeah, well, first, Logitech. For those who don't know, our tagline is your ticketing connector. And then we like to say we're the most trusted and innovative solution for optimizing ticket sales. We have clients in the reseller space who are professional resellers, and we have rights holders that we represent. We optimize tickets for and have various partnerships, hundreds of clients across the country and expanding internationally as well. And my role is to, in a nutshell, make sure that we're providing the solutions that our clients are looking for. So they all have different objectives, and our teams have different ways we work with them. I want to make sure that we are hitting those benchmarks that they've set aside for us, but then also that we are evolving in a way that's impactful for them. And we have a team that is fantastic at providing touch points to our partners, to our clients, and providing them with dashboards and insights that we feed off of.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And of course, it's a partnership between, you said you're working with some resellers, but also with the rights holders. You mentioned the dashboards. They might need some information to see what sells and when. So I guess that partnership is all ongoing and, trying for you to feed them with the right information and data.
That's absolutely correct. So as an example, on our reseller side, they want to have tools where they can most efficiently get their inventory out to the masses at the prices they want them at, and that at the end of the day, the tickets get into the right person's hands. But then they also want to make sure that they are optimizing those tickets as far as pricing goes and the specific events they might be choosing to purchase. So we want to make sure that we have the tools where they can do all of that efficiently and effectively. So we may get into it later, but Logitech One is a platform we developed that was largely based on listening. It was just, what's missing here? What solution can we provide? And in a nutshell, Logitech One is a one-stop shop for optimizing tickets where we can ingest, we can distribute on a bunch of different marketplaces where buyers are buying. We can fulfill those orders, and then we can also provide these tools where it showcases activity of those tickets that you are acquiring and some historical data, whatever you might need. And on the rights holder side, it's very similar. You may have a team in the NHL with completely different objectives than another team. And more specifically, one may say, hey, I want to max out on revenue. Well, who doesn't? But I want to protect my season ticket holders and hold a high average ticket price. Our team has tactics and strategies for that. But at the same time, there are others that they want more exposure out into the marketplace. It's more of a volume play. They want to get people into the building. And although Logitech is not an inherent marketing company, we can't really create demand. We can optimize it with our tools, with sourcing different distribution channels where the buyers are increasingly buying. That includes the secondary market, but could also include some other means where consumers are increasingly going to purchase their entertainment tickets.
Yeah, so it's a balance there, right? To have not to have too low prices to irritate your season ticket holders, but still you want to have a full house, I assume, and a lot of other aspects that might play in. Maybe there are a certain player in the league that attracts a lot of attraction, and so some of those things. So I guess that the Logitech One platform, maybe you have everything in there to have that data.
Yeah, we like to think so. We have commercial data sharing agreements where, by the way, data is very important to us. So it's never any sensitive data of any individuals that we are sharing and selling or anything like that. But we want to have as much data as possible so that our clients can make informed decisions. And frankly, in-house, we can make informed decisions. But exactly what you just said. And we even have some of our clients who say, hey, I want a high average ticket price in this season ticket sensitive area, but in the upper level, I just want to get as many people in the building as possible. Well, our team, because we own our own dynamic pricing technology, and we have a team of pricers that has years of experience with low demand, high demand events and all the different sports and live entertainment you can think of to really develop a game plan and a playbook to do that. But I want to make sure we all remember we are all doing it at the discretion of what our clients want us to do. So if a rights holder, we may make a recommendation, but if something may change in their objectives, that really is none of our business. We just want to be a good partner, and at the end of the day, an extension of their team to execute.
I understand. I assume you work also outside of sports, but if we focus on the sports industry here on this podcast, does it differ a lot between different sports in how you work?
Not a whole lot. It really doesn't. Really, the makeup of some of these sports teams, like let's take, for example, the 5 major sports leagues that we consider in the United States, where it's MLS, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA, and NFL. Really, the nature of more or less games is the biggest impactful factor in that. But as far as how we work, as far as deal structures, our partnerships with the teams, they're all looking for actionable data and insights. That's number one. And we can provide that through our technology, through the data we have access to, but also as a consultancy. People like me who worked on what we call the team side for a sports team for over 10 years, take that experience, and we have a lot of those at Logitech who have that and kind of know what these teams are looking for. But when I say it's more impactful as far as the makeup of those leagues and the number of games, obviously you have 40 plus games in the NBA and NHL, 81 home games in Major League Baseball. So when our team of pricers and partnerships team members are looking ahead at the best ways to optimize, we really need to take into account a lot of factors that are variables coming into play, where how many games do you have in a week? Early season games typically perform. How does weather play into it? And other factors like that. But, really for the most part, how we partner doesn't differ a whole lot.
Interesting. So for hockey then, that it's indoors, it doesn't have the weather aspects to take into consideration.
Well, I would argue that it could if there's a lot of ice on the roads, there's a projected blizzard 10 days out from the game. But yeah, of course not. It doesn't, it's not as much of a factor, of course, as baseball when you have to wear the elements and be out there. And, we're trying to figure out how to really factor in weather and these other variables, how much of a weight should we put on it, and how far out? Are people getting their tickets 5 to 10 days out? And this is something that we study. Maybe it should be the projected weather from that moment on. And if it looks like it's going to be bad, that might influence us to push out tickets more on a volume play at the discretion of a rights holder, so that we fill up the building and have a little bit more to work with as we get closer to an event.
I assume you take in, all kinds of factors when you're having these decisions, but we mentioned weather, of course, maybe if it's a playoff game or not, but can you mention some, like a couple that are like more important than others?
Absolutely. The NHL schedule was just released a couple weeks ago. And one factor we increasingly look at is How many home games are within a 2 week span, or even in the same week, and that can heavily weight how we score a game. So one you may have heard of game tiering. A lot of those familiar with dynamic pricing will say, okay, I'll look at my schedule and I'll label a game that when Lionel Messi's coming in town in the MLS, that is an A game. But there are B games, C games, D games. At Logitech, we're moving towards what we call event scores. And that's the ultimate granularity where it would be, as an example, there could be a B game, a B plus, a B plus plus. But factors that go into that are not just the opponent and the day of the week. And those are usually two very important factors. Saturday games are typically fantastic in any league, whereas Monday games are not. And obviously, if you have a rival, that's really good. However, if you have a Saturday game, but then that week you also had a Tuesday and Thursday game, that Saturday projected outcome as far as revenue won't be as good typically if every other factor is controlled as if you didn't have a home game that entire week. So we're taking those factors into account. It's also, we have a lot of historical data on beginning of the season, middle of the season, end of the season. Playoff projections and sentiment are some subjective factors that come into that as well. And then, we try to look at league-wide trends, what's happening throughout the league year over year to help us understand sort of, how we can anticipate that demand. And I'll tell you a big one that our team is studying right now, and we're on the cusp of kind of rolling this out and making it a part of our suggestions and something we provide to our partners is, what are the impacts if you have a lot of events going on in your city? Okay. So if it's a bigger city, let's say Chicago, and the three major sports teams in a given fall, the Bulls, the Bears, and the Blackhawks, all have games that weekend at home. Okay. And opponent is controlled for. How does that impact things then if only, you're the Blackhawks, but the Bears and the Bulls are not in town that weekend? And from some initial analysis we've done, there's actually a noticeable impact, and that might affect how you are going to strategize your tickets for that event weeks out.
So, and all of this is incorporated in you mentioned it before, the Logitech One platform to simplify the entire ticketing life cycle and empowering your clients. So can you talk a little bit more about this platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one where it's a single interface that, like I mentioned at the beginning, a one-stop shop for optimizing ticketing, where the event inventory can be ingested. We have on there the ability to distribute it onto multiple marketplaces. And to be more specific on that, over a dozen different places where the buyers are buying, traditionally referred to as the secondary market primarily, your StubHub, Vivid Seats, Game Time, SeatGeek. And so it's listed in front of the buyers all at the same time. And if somebody purchases off of Vivid, it gets taken down on the rest of those marketplaces. And the platform has the ability to then make sure the order is fulfilled, meaning that the ticket gets in the hands of the buyer at the very end. So that's basically what's called the automation process. However, at the same time, when Logitech is actively managing tickets, we have our dynamic pricing going to work as well. And our dynamic pricing is a mixture of art and science. And I talked a little bit about both of those, where our pricing team comes into play. But we also have on this platform right in front of our eyes some data and insights, a module that showcases how a single event, the marketplace, might be changing a little bit from day to day, where there could be more listings on the various marketplaces, or the pricing has spiked quite a bit overnight. So we can have these flags and indicators that might tell us maybe we should make some pricing changes here. Maybe we should change our tactics. And then it also has some really cool advanced tools that might be for an entirely different podcast that our pricing team does a great job at, where we can share the appropriate amount of inventory on the marketplaces at a given time so that we can really understand what the right price is for consumers. I think a lot of people dynamic pricing, when you hear that, you think of, oh, pricing, it's just going up and up and up and gouging. Well, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes our data may suggest if we went down $8 in a certain zone, then hundreds more people, it's now in their buy zone in a certain area. And so maybe that's the difference in producing more revenue and at the same time increasing fan sentiment. But hopefully we're making our clients happy at the same time.
I'm sure you do. And I mean, you mentioned before all kinds of dashboards and so forth. So can the rights holder in this case go in and have this like live view of what's happening?
Great question. Yes, they can. They always have the keys. And, this gets back to us serving as an extension of their team. We never consider the inventory ours. It is always their inventory. We are always serving on their behalf. They can always go in the dashboards, see what's happening. I love when that happens because it shows that there's value that we're providing. And I know many of them use that to justify other decisions that they make internally, whether it be marketing or pricing changes on their primary ticketing system. We have canned dashboards, I'll call them, that showcase velocity, how quickly tickets are being purchased leading up to the event, which marketplaces. But then we also will customize dashboards for our clients if they ask for something specific, such as, hey, I really want to drill down on the club area and here's what I want to know. And maybe you can build a graph that has this or that, that'll really help me understand if we should repurpose this spot.
How helpful is it that you mentioned you and other people on your team as well, that they have been on the other side, they have been on the rights holder side. So maybe then what you would have liked in that position, and now you can try to give that from the service side.
Yeah, well, my first introduction to services like this on the team side, it showed me how I could have more confidence in my decisions. I mean, the easiest part was just like, okay, if they are going to share some data with me on just how tickets in this certain area, how they're transacting on these secondary markets, that gives me a lot more confidence when I can combine it with what we are seeing on our primary ticketing channels internally. And so, I mean, that was number one. It's like, this has tremendous value no matter what market landscape that you're in. But then number two, I think I have also an understanding of how some decisions are made internally. So when it comes time to partnering with someone like Logitechs, that we make sure we cover some bases on kind of what I've mentioned to you already of we're an extension of your team and we will cater whatever partnership offer to what your landscape looks like and what your objectives are. We don't have a menu that we say, okay, well, here are our offerings, here are our prices. That's not how we operate at all, because we want to make sure that we're aligning with a partner. And that's I think that's why I keep saying that word over and over, is partnership, because that's how we see it.
Yeah, and I think in general, like partnerships is used more instead of sponsorship in many ways as well, because you want to really emphasize that partner aspect of a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And, we also when we talk about a reseller side of the business, many of them do want us to be just completely hands off, make sure that we have the tech that they need, the dashboards created. And maybe you would say, okay, it's a client relationship. But in the same token, we want to make sure that as things are evolving in their business and there are technology needs, data needs, how can we be ready for that? And so they're very helpful for us, as I said at the beginning, all of our clients or partners, whatever you want to call them, in developing Logitech's One platform and the different solutions.
So we mentioned that you have been on the other side, on the rights holder side. So I'm interested to dig a little bit deeper in your career. So how did you get into sports in the first place, and how has your journey been up until this point?
Yeah, so I got into sports without an internship, and I played baseball in college and knew I wanted to stay involved in sports, but I didn't want to coach. So obviously, you have to join the business side of it. And I started calling contacts for advice. Long story short, everybody said, hey, if you don't have any experience, any internships, you have to start in sales. And that did not get me excited at all. I never saw myself as a salesperson. I had a stigma in my head about what that might mean. But long story short, I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then I moved to Atlanta, where at the time we had a hockey and a basketball team. And I thought, okay, this will be great. I can work in two sports, learn a lot more. Really, it wasn't that impactful to work for two sports teams. They both kind of operate the same. And within a week, I love sales. It wasn't at all what I thought of it. I love the relationship aspect of it, but also just hearing about the objectives and goals, even when I started and it was a family of four of just creating memories. And I know it sounds cliche, but, understanding what would make sense and not make sense for them. And then, on and on. I think I gravitated more towards the business side of selling. And so my path was a lot more in premium sales. And my first position in management was managing suite sales and premium. So B2B. I was in Atlanta for over 10 years. And then I was with the Miami Marlins for 3 seasons before joining Logitechs, and just learned a ton from both organizations. And, realized that working in sports is a lot like any other business. It's just probably a lot more energetic and fun knowing that you have games the night of that when you're working in the office, and you kind of feel a part of a team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important that you mentioned that you didn't have the typical way into the industry, because I think that's important for listeners to know that you don't have to study sports management or there are many ways into it. And you studied sociology, markets and management.
Yep. Markson, that's correct. Yeah, Duke at the time, they didn't have a business major. Now they actually do. And that's what I was told if you wanted to get into business. But really, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do exactly other than stay in sports. I would recommend, though, even though I didn't do it, yes, you're correct. There are many paths. But if you can get an internship, if you can lean into it in whatever capacity, and there are such great programs now, especially in the United States, where they have development programs. The internships that I see now, you just get such a leg up. And I think that's a great pathway to get in, regardless of the department you eventually want to end up in, or if you don't even know, like myself, and just get lucky that the place you started is the right place.
So after being more than 10 years, as you said, on the right shoulder side, on the team's side, what made you take this jump to change to Logitechs?
Actually, our current chief revenue officer here at Logitechs, Travis Apple, gave me a call. He had recently joined the Miami Marlins as part of the new regime they brought in with Derek Jeter's ownership group. And, really my initial reaction was, it sounds like a lot of the stuff I've done and been doing, but I trust him. And then the challenge of Miami, which remains a huge challenge to try to sell in general, but especially premium, that attracted me. And then secondarily, I grew up about an hour north, and I had family in Boca Raton, Delray Beach area. And so those were the main factors that got me down to Miami initially to join the Marlins.
So why is it so difficult in Miami for someone like myself that I'm not so aware with the landscape?
Yeah, well, a lot of people are familiar with Miami who aren't even that far from there, and it was a lot more difficult than I anticipated, and I felt like I knew Miami. It is not. Everyone says they have a lot of fair-weathered fans. They're just going to go when the teams are winning, and they certainly come when the teams are winning. What I learned is that the competition there, unlike any other city I can think of, except maybe you'd argue Las Vegas, is there are fun things to do every single night of the year, every single day of the year. And even dinners are events 2.5, 3 miles away. They have fantastic places where I talked about selling to businesses and trying to sell them maybe a suite, 8 to 12 people or more. And there are just great places where you can do that. That's not even a sporting event or considered an event in Miami, all over the place. But then also right now, it doesn't get dark until past 8 o'clock, and any day of the week, if you're riding into a Marlins game and you're near the water, you see hundreds of boats that are out. I mean, people are still able to be outdoors in the weather on boats. And so you're competing against that as well, as far as, hey, come to a baseball game when there are a lot of other things going on. And then that's just not even to mention all the different sports that come in, the friendlies, the concerts. They are always bidding for that stuff, as you know, the Copa final was played in Miami as well.
And also weather that makes it easy to be outside, and that opens up more activities as well.
Exactly. And so there's but again, that makes it a fun challenge, and we would try to make Marlins games about more than just baseball, than more about just the game. The baseball fans were not the difficult part. I mean, I wanted to find, how can we get into these banks and have them look at the Marlins as a business tool, as a solution for entertaining their clients or employee morale, whatever it might be. And so the challenge was, okay, well, let's create an environment that speaks to that, whether it be the food and beverages that we're offering, the service at our valet, and just the overall atmosphere.
That's something I noticed when I've gone to sports in the US, that it's more the experience as a whole, while like here in, I don't know, Europe at large, but in Sweden, you go for the sport and you want to follow the action on the game. While in US, maybe you slide out and buy a hot dog and then come back in again and you walk around. And so it's a more of the full experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, I recall numerous times when new arenas are being built, whether it's baseball stadiums as well. And a lot of the articles that you'll read now is about the variety of spaces. And a lot of these new stadiums that are being built, they're not talking about the capacity they have, which is something that used to be talked about 20 years ago. Now, like, oh, we have 70,000 seats. It's that we have, 8 different premium areas. We have four-person boxes and 20-person boxes, where there are different levels of energy and privacy and access. So I feel like a lot of it is trying to find something for everybody, so that there's always a solution if someone has an inkling to get a ticket package or just to go to an individual game. Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up.
Considering that you have been, over a decade in the sports industry, what would be some advice that you have for people who want to pursue a career in sports?
Okay. Somebody gave me this early on in my career, and it's become habit over time, and I didn't do it leading in, is to do a lot of reading, especially just about business. Okay. So it doesn't even need to be about sports. I will plug, and I'm not a partner with them by any means, but Front Office Sports, I think, does a great job of mixing the two. And that's been one over the past couple of years I've really leaned into. But before that, early on in my career, it would just be something in the morning. I would read a little bit about it, understand the economy a little bit better, just what's going on in the general business landscape. And that really helped me, not just understanding internally how our own business might be running, but connecting to those who you're trying to partner with and trying to sell. But at the end of the day too, even if, the question I think is more geared towards sports, but in your life too, I think it's a great investment to make to understand that.
I agree. And Front Office Sports is great. And I had their founder on here a while back as well. And great guy. And I love their podcast. They have like a daily 15 minutes, something like that. So they up, whatever is new in the sports industry. So I agree on that.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't even know you had him on. But yeah, it's just great content that they do. They do a terrific job.
I like the advice there also to read up on not only in sports, but maybe business in general. And you can always take learnings from other fields as well, not only to read up on sports.
Absolutely.
Has there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I it's funny, right? When you say bumps in the road in my career, I think of, there was a year where we lost our hockey team in the NHL at the same time the NBA went into a lockout. And that was a bump in the road where I wasn't worried about my job per se, but I was I was concerned about how do we, how do we make our clients healthy? I'm on the premium side now where our clients have access to both the basketball games and the hockey game. We just lost the hockey game. And that forced me to critically think and to, lean on those above me on how are we going to, effectively make these people happy moving forward and get creative. And I think until that point, I just kind of rolled with all the benefits that we had. Okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. But, that was a big bump where our organization completely changed. And we were all forced to, sort of pivot and rethink things as far as just our core pricing in addition to the different solutions that we're providing. But, there are always going to be small bumps that go on throughout the road. Nothing significantly sticks out, but I will say it's part of what's exciting, I think, about the sports and entertainment industry is the constant evolution of the ticketing landscape of consumers. Even year over year, I notice changes. So it's always happening. That's just one that sticks out.
Yeah, I understand that. And also, during COVID, I assume working with live sports, that also was a bump for all of us.
Oh yeah, that would have. That's probably the one you were expecting, and yeah, obviously it was. But it's funny when towards the end of when I was saying there are always little bumps and whatnot. A lot of people rush back to concerts. Terrific last year, and I think maybe those were impacts from not being able to see live events for a while. And I say last year, it's really been the last couple of years. Well, I'm reading a lot of information now, and I don't know how true it is. I'm sure our smart analysts can tell me, but I'm hearing there might be concert fatigue. There might be some inventory that's more difficult to move in many different verticals because of maybe everyone got back on to the concerts and now it's just kind of like, okay, been there, done that. And I think it's forcing a reevaluation of, pricing and maybe the number of live events.
That is interesting. So that because there were no events during COVID, everyone rushed back afterwards, and now it's kind of staggering a little bit.
That is only my theory. I mean, I don't even know if it's that bad right now. I just have seen multiple articles about X artist is finding difficulty selling for this new tour and that tour. And then I just saw one article that just basically tried to put it together of the number of tours that are out there and have been announced in 2024 compared to even a couple years ago, and coupled with a couple years ago, a lot of people were just getting comfortable getting back to those live events. And so maybe I'm taking a bit of that conclusion, but it'll be interesting to see if there are more findings in that capacity.
Definitely. But I mean, it makes sense. I would draw the same conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have it backed by any data at all. I'm just thinking, okay, well, yeah, that's making a lot of sense that maybe that's happening a little bit. Nothing replaces live events, so nothing at all.
That's true. Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you would like to mention?
I guess as it relates to what Logitech does in the ticketing ecosystem in general, I think it's important to note that I see a positive trend in the barriers being broken with the rights holders of tickets. And by that, of course, I mean the specific sports team or the venue that has the rights to the tickets, and really embracing having those tickets up on as many marketplaces that are reputable as possible so that the consumers can get those tickets. And I just think it's important to mention where all of us consumers, we may have a favorite spot we go for items. I go on Amazon, and if they don't have an item that is maybe a want but not a need, I'm probably not getting it. In the same way, a consumer that maybe they kind of want to go to a baseball game one evening, and if it's not on the marketplace, they might have the Game Time app, they might not go. And so, it has a lot of benefits as far as a rights holder putting their tickets on these marketplaces. One, they know who the buyers are and what the transaction cost is, but then also they're making sure they're not missing out on opportunity that might have never been there otherwise. And so Logitechs, we're continuing to expand our different distribution channels too. I just mentioned Game Time. I had not heard of Game Time 5 or 6 years ago, but now it's one of the big four marketplaces that a lot of, I know a lot of people think that it's just, a younger audience. It's not just a younger audience. But my point is, what's the next one? There could be one right now that is, the teenage crowd or the crowd in college is acquiring as an app. And I think it's great that all of these rights holders are leaning into that and making sure that their tickets are represented on all of those apps as they continue to grow and are sourced.
Yeah, and as you said, like maybe if you are only on one or two platforms, then you're missing out on a huge opportunity because other people might look elsewhere.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, you're obviously getting good data and insights because you're represented there in those transactions, but then you don't know also about the opportunity that you missed. And your whole data set is more complete. And it's great for the fans too, because, again, I don't have the data on how often people shop around, but I know if something is not on my Amazon app, it seems like everything is. So that's maybe the wrong example, but I'm not going to take the time to shop around. So maybe there are other people like me.
100%. So I like to end these chats with a networking question. And you have been kind enough already to provide me with some future guests on this podcast. But if you look again into your black book, do you have anyone from your network that you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
I'm sure I have a bunch for you that'd be really valuable. One that comes in my head from working in Atlanta in the past, Eric Platt, and I can connect you with him where I hope I get his title right, VP of Global Partnerships. He was VP of Ticket Sales. And it's interesting, he made the transition from overseeing ticket sales in Atlanta to partnerships and just the title Global Partnerships. I think he'd be interesting to have on and how brands have evolved and maybe how the Atlanta Hawks have attempted to attract brands, whether they're looking for exposure or relevance, and just the evolution of that.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a great guest. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
I really appreciate you having me, Marcus. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportmpodcast.